Buffy, the Vampire Slayer. Converged. Chapter 1. The Reawakening. Bon Temps. The hazy, humid air of Bon Temps clung to everything it touched. The moon cast a silver sheen over the bayou, its reflection dancing over the water's ripples. A night like any other, or so it seemed. Bill Compton, dressed in his customary period clothing, was walking back to his mansion when an unnatural chill ran down his spine. His keen vampire senses alerted him to an unfamiliar presence in the vicinity. Hidden within the trees, an older vampire with a pale, almost translucent countenance stepped forward. His eyes were an unsettling shade of red, a stark contrast to the white of his hair. "William Compton," he murmured, his voice betraying centuries of existence. "Who are you?" Bill demanded, his voice betraying a mix of surprise and trepidation. The stranger smiled coldly, revealing a set of perfectly sharp fangs. "Names are inconsequential. However, you may address me as Gregor. What should concern you is what I bring, tidings of an old terror awakening." Bill stiffened. "Speak plainly." "Very well," Gregor smirked. "Dracula is returning." Silence hung heavily between them. The very name invoked legends, tales of unparalleled power and cruelty. Bill finally managed, "Why here? Why now?" Gregor leaned in. A scientist, a vision, a plot to merge demons, vampires, and werewolves. An army the likes of which this world has never seen. Bill's eyes widened. The ramifications were cataclysmic. Before he could probe further, Gregor vanished into the shadows, his message delivered. Meanwhile, Merlotte's was its usual cacophony of thoughts, laughter, and clinking glasses. Sookie, balancing a tray full of drinks, tried her best to block out the minds of the patrons. However, a particular thought thread from a stranger caught her attention. Something's not right in Sunnydale. Too many missing folks. Rumors of the Hellmouth acting up. She discreetly eyed the stranger, a middle-aged man engrossed in a conversation with Sam Merlotte. As their discussion ended, she approached Sam. "Who was that?" Sam, wiping down the counter, replied, "Some guy passing through. Mentioned he's from Sunnydale. Why?" Sookie hesitated. "Just a hunch. I might need to dig deeper." As night deepened, Bill found himself on the phone with Eric Northman. Their conversation was tense. Both ancient vampires recognized the weight of the revelation. "We need to gather our allies," Eric declared. "If Dracula truly returns, it won't just be Bon Temps or Louisiana at stake. It'll be the world." Bill nodded, though Eric couldn't see it. "Agreed. I'll start my investigations here. You reach out to your contacts." In the heart of Bon Temps, as the townsfolk lay asleep, darker forces began to weave their insidious plots. Whispers of an old vampire legend's return would soon grow louder, echoing across realms, connecting dots from Bon Temps to Sunnydale and beyond. Chapter 2. Unnatural Alliance. Sunnydale. A dim streetlight flickered, casting elongated shadows on the alleyways of Sunnydale. The once familiar town had started to feel different lately, even to its lifelong inhabitants. The night air was thick with an energy that couldn't be ignored. Buffy, patrolling as she often did, twirled her stake in hand. But tonight was unlike any other. She had an eerie sense that something big was about to happen. Her Slayer senses tingled as she approached the cemetery. The full moon cast long shadows across the tombstones of Sunnydale Cemetery. A light breeze rustled the leaves, and an eerie quiet was momentarily disrupted by the sound of footsteps. 3 vampires emerged from the shadows, their game faces showcasing ridged brows and fangs. They stalked their prey, a seemingly lone blonde woman standing defiantly amidst the gravestones. "I never get why they think cemeteries are the best hunting spots," Buffy mused aloud, holding a stake in her hand. "It's kinda cliché, don't you think?" One of the vampires sneered. "Fresh meat always comes to morn. It's like a 2-for-1 special." The second vampire added with a chuckle, and tonight, "Slayer, you're on the menu." Buffy smirked. "Didn't anyone tell you? I'm more of a main course." Without another word, she launched herself at the nearest vampire. A roundhouse kick sent him crashing against a tombstone. Buffy quickly spun, ducking under the swipe of the second vampire and landing a solid punch, her now perfected vampire vagina punch, which made her double over in agony. The classic vagina punch still works every time, Buffy quipped with a wink. The third vampire, not to be deterred, lunged at Buffy. But she was ready. Twisting her body, she used his momentum to fling him over her shoulder. He barely had time to recover before her stake found its mark, turning him into dust. The first vampire, having regained his bearings, charged at Buffy. They clashed, a whirlwind of kicks and punches. But Buffy's experience showed. She deftly dodged his fangs, and with one swift move, impaled him, reducing him to a pile of ashes. The second vampire, recovering from Buffy's signature move, snarled and leapt at her from behind. Buffy felt her and, at the last second, sidestepped, tripping her in the process. Before she could react, she planted a stake into her heart. Wiping off the dust from her clothes, she looked around at the empty cemetery and remarked with satisfaction, "And that's 3 for 3. She paused for a moment, holding her fist up, looking at it. Reflecting, perfecting, the vampire vagina punch might just be my crowning achievement this year. Suddenly, a beastly creature, neither vampire nor demon nor werewolf, but a horrifying amalgamation of all three, lunged at her, sending them both smashing through a mausoleum. The gigantic creature's jaws descended upon her throat, and Buffy just managed to jam her foot under its throat, preventing the vise of teeth from tearing her skull apart. "What are you?" she yelled as she grabbed a nearby broken piece of stone and thrust it into the creature's eye. The creature stumbled backwards, clutching its orbital. Buffy wasted no time and unleashed an onslaught of spinning kicks, picking up her fallen stake nearby and slamming into the center of the creature's chest. Instead of erupting into dust, the creature simply swiped at her again. Buffy, paralyzed in a moment of disbelief, snapped back to the moment and jumped in the air, kicking the stake, driving it further into the creature's chest. Yet instead of turning to dust as a vampire would, it left behind a lifeless body that rapidly decomposed before her eyes. "What the hell?" she uttered in disbelief. Horrified, she returned to the magic box, where the rest of the Scooby gang had gathered. She recounted her encounter, her descriptions causing Giles to hastily flip through his ancient books, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. "From your description, it seems to be a crossbreed," Willow mused, her nose wrinkling in confusion. "That's not natural, even by Sunnydale standards. It's an abomination," Giles said gravely, finally looking up from his book. "This blending of creatures has been theorized, but I never thought I'd see the day. The power and potential of such a creature are unfathomable. But who would create such a thing?" Xander wondered out loud. Always the voice of poignant and sometimes comedic reason. He added jokingly, maybe it's a new villainous startup. "Monsters 2.0. Xander, this isn't the time," Buffy shot back, though the hint of a smile played on her lips. Sensing the tension, Willow began to prepare for a powerful locator spell. The room filled with the scent of burning sage, and her eyes turned black as she chanted. A map of Sunnydale spread out on the table before them glowed brightly, converging on one location, the old Initiative Labs. "Looks like we've got our lead," Buffy stated, determination evident in her eyes. As they prepared to leave, Giles intercepted Willow. "You've grown so much stronger, but remember, this spell may have repercussions. Every action has a counter-reaction in magic." Willow nodded, a reminder of her past dark magic transgressions and her continuing journey towards balance. Meanwhile, deep in the abandoned Initiative Labs, a shadowy figure loomed over cages filled with these crossbred monstrosities. Monitoring their vitals and observing their behaviors, Dr. Nigel Madison, a renegade scientist obsessed with creating the perfect supernatural creature, was on the brink of achieving his life's work. "You will change the world," he whispered to his creations, a twisted look of pride in his eyes. Back at the magic box, as the team was gearing up, Willow's spell made another unexpected connection. A powerful energy source emanating from Bon Temps pulsed in tandem with the energy from these creatures. Their destinies, it seemed, were intertwined. "We might be out of our depth here," Giles pondered. Perhaps we need allies. If these energies are connected, we may need to learn more about Bon Temps. Just then, the phone rang. Anya, while counting the cash for the night, answered. It was Suki, reaching out after her own discoveries in Bon Temps. Their worlds, already filled with the supernatural, were about to collide in ways they couldn't yet imagine. With this revelation, the Scooby Gang realized the battle was bigger than Sunnydale. They were now part of an alliance, one that stretched beyond their hometown. Together, they would uncover the mysteries behind these unnatural creatures and the force that threatened to plunge their world into darkness. Chapter 3: Old Wounds. Los Angeles. The night skyline of Los Angeles was a stark contrast to the quiet darkness of Sunnydale. Tall buildings, bustling streets, and a never-ending hum of city life. Angel Investigations was located in the heart of it all. Inside, Wesley was engrossed in his studies, Gunn was cleaning his weapons, and Lorne lounged, sipping a sea breeze. As Angel entered, his signature brooding demeanor seemed heavier than usual. There's been another one. A disappearance in the alleys off 5th Street. But it's not a demon or a vampire. It's something else. Could be a werewolf, Gunn quipped. You know, like the one that used to visit Sunnydale every month. We would be so lucky, Angel sighed. This is different. And from what I've gathered, it's connected to the activities in Sunnydale. Cordelia, now more mature but still every bit as fashionable, walked in, her eyes glazed over as they often did when she had a vision. She collapsed into a chair, panting. The Hellmouth. Something's brewing, Angel, and it's big. There's a confluence of energies, old and new, and at the center of it all, Dracula. Angel's face darkened, memories flooding back. Dracula, he murmured, recalling their past confrontations and the complications the infamous vampire brought. Gunn, ever curious about Angel's mysterious past, piped up. You and Dracula have history? Wesley, taking off his glasses for emphasis, explained Angel, or rather Angelus and Dracula, had a few run-ins in the past. Their competitive nature over who was the most feared vampire in Europe led to some colorful encounters. A wistful look crossed Cordelia's face. Remember when Buffy dated him for like a minute? Good times. Angel shot her a look, both exasperated and fond. She didn't date him, Cordy. A mischievous grin played on Cordelia's lips. Sure looked like dating to me. Lorne, always the voice of reason, interrupted their banter. Sweet cheeks, as much as I adore your walk down memory lane, we have a brewing apocalypse to address. And if your vision is any indication, our answers lie in Sunnydale. Wesley nodded in agreement. We need to be prepared. We should contact Buffy and the others, pool our resources. Just as they were discussing their next steps, a knock on the door interrupted them. The door swung open to reveal Spike, holding a pack of cigarettes and wearing his signature smirk. Look what the cat dragged in, Gunn remarked, amused. Angel groaned. What do you want, Spike? Spike sauntered in, looking around, got wind of Dracula's return. Figured it's about time we settle some old scores. Plus, with the chaos in Sunnydale, it's all hands on deck. Cordelia, not one to pass an opportunity for snark, quipped, finally, a family reunion. Spike rolled his eyes, less of the family, more of the enemy of my enemy. Heard you lot might be in need of some assistance. Angel, despite his reservations, recognized the truth in Spike's words. With a heavy sigh, he conceded, all right. We pool our resources and head to Sunnydale. The Hellmouth is opening again, and it looks like we're in for a fight. Chapter 4: Vampires in Bon Temps. Bon Temps. The neon sign of Fangtasia buzzed to life as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a lurid red glow onto the parking lot. The vampire bar run by Eric Northman was the go-to place for vampires and those who were obsessed with the vampire lifestyle. However, tonight was different. Inside, Eric and Pam sat in their usual booth. Both sensed the underlying tension, a static charge in the air that spoke of danger. Something's changed, Pam remarked, her pale blue eyes scanning the crowd. It's not just the usual bloodsuckers here tonight. Eric nodded, his sharp gaze locking onto a new vampire, one he hadn't seen before. This newcomer had an aura that was decidedly different from the other vampires. The rumors from Sunnydale, he mused. They're not just rumors. Tam's lips curled into a smirk, and you thought Buffy Summers' tales were just fairy tales. Eric shot her a glare. I never dismissed the Slayer, especially not one with Buffy's reputation. I merely hoped our paths would never need to cross. The entrance of the bar swung open, revealing Tara and Jessica. The two young vampires seemed a bit overwhelmed, their expressions betraying their internal struggles with the hybrid creatures and the unease they felt in the changing world. Jessica's eyes were red-rimmed, evidence of recent feeding. She had been struggling with her new vampire nature, and the changes in Bon Temps only made it more challenging. Tara, it's not like the old days. Everything's shifting, and I don't know where I fit in anymore. Tara nodded, placing a comforting hand on Jessica's arm. I get it, Jess. This isn't what I signed up for either, but we have to stick together. We have to find out more about these creatures. Across the bar, Lafayette, dressed flamboyantly as ever, sashayed over to their table, holding a tray of his famous cocktails. Ladies, he greeted with a smirk, seems like you two could use a drink on the house. Jessica managed a weak smile. Thanks, Lafayette. You always know how to cheer me up. Lafayette leaned in closer, his expression turning serious. You two need to be careful. I've been hearing things. There's a force, a big bad, heading our way. And Sunnydale. It's the epicenter. Tara frowned. Sunnydale? Isn't that Buffy's turf? Lafayette nodded. And if the rumors are true, we're going to need all the help we can get. Just as they were discussing their next move, the doors to Fantascia burst open, revealing a figure from Tara's past. Willow Rosenberg. Tara's eyes widened. Memories of her namesake from Sunnydale, Willow's one true love who had tragically died, came rushing back. This wasn't her Willow, but the shared name and connection to the supernatural were enough to stir up old emotions. Willow, her red hair a sharp contrast to the dark ambiance of the bar, scanned the room before her gaze settled on Eric and Pam. With a determined stride, she approached them. We need to talk. Eric raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. And you are? Willow Rosenberg, witch, friend of Buffy, and someone who believes that we might be on the same side for once. Pam smirked. This is new. A witch in Fantascia. Willow ignored the jab, her green eyes intent on Eric. Sunnydale's in trouble, which means the world is in trouble. Dracula's back and he's not alone. We need to join forces. Eric considered her words, the weight of the situation apparent in his gaze. All right, witch. Let's hear what you have to say. Chapter 5, Demonic Science. Sunnydale. Sunnydale High's library, though now replaced with a brand new structure post its explosive exit, remained the epicenter for all things supernatural for the Scooby Gang. And even amidst the modern architecture and shiny new bookcases, the essence of the old library lingered. The memories, the battles, and the all-too-familiar sense of impending doom. Giles, once the librarian and always the researcher, stood hunched over an ancient-looking book, his fingers tracing the almost faded text. Beside him was a meticulously arranged collection of artifacts, symbols, and scrolls. For the older Englishman, this was just another Tuesday. However, for Xander and Anya, today was anything but typical. While on one of their romantic graveyard patrols, which really meant Xander attempting to stake vampires while Anya provided sarcastic commentary, they had stumbled upon something unsettling. It looked like Dr. Frankenstein's garage sale, Xander began, gesturing wildly, the unease evident in his voice. There were all these jars, and they were moving Giles. Anya, who had a penchant for bluntness, added, he means they had bits of demons and vampires. Someone's playing mix and match with the supernatural. Giles, ever the voice of reason, adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. This could be the key to understanding what we're up against. Suddenly, the door to the library burst open, revealing Buffy, her face flushed from what looked like recent fight. Tell me you've got something, she panted, dusting her hands, evidence of a freshly staked vampire. Because Sunnydale's creepy quotient just skyrocketed, and that's saying something. Giles motioned to the text before him. From what I've deciphered, it's worse than we imagined. It seems Dracula has aligned with a scientist, someone well-versed in both science and dark arts. Great, Buffy rolled her eyes, because regular Dracula wasn't bad enough. Now we have Dracula with a lab coat. Before anyone could respond, the room was filled with a chilly wind as a shadow materialized into a figure, Spike. The bleach-blonde vampire with his leather duster and ever-present smirk said, "Heard you lot were dealing with the Count. Thought I'd drop by, for old time's sake. Good old Drac is one cheeky cunt. You're gonna need all the help you can get." Buffy eyed him skeptically. Yeah, we all know Dracula's a cunt, but why should we trust you? Spike raised an eyebrow, looking genuinely offended. I may not have the chip in my head anymore, love, but that doesn't mean I've gone back to rooting for the bad guys. Giles cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the text. This scientist, whoever they are, aims to blend the strengths of both vampires and demons, eliminating their respective weaknesses. Immortality combined with increased strength and none of the traditional vulnerabilities. Xander groaned. So sunlight, stakes, and holy water are off the table. We're doomed. Anya patted his arm. Don't worry, sweetie. If we die, I promise to haunt you. Buffy, trying to maintain focus, responded, We need to find this lab. Stop this experiment before Sunnydale becomes the hub for hybrid monsters. Spike smirked. I might have a lead. Heard some vamps whispering about a location. Of course it's going to cost you. Buffy glared. What do you want, Spike? With a playful glint in his eyes, Spike responded, How about a date? Buffy rolled her eyes, but her slight smile betrayed her. One date. But it's going to be a long, long time before I let you pick the movie. As plans were made and stakes sharpened, the Scooby Gang prepared to face yet another supernatural menace, proving that while the monsters might evolve, the spirit of the fight remained unchanged. Chapter 6. Return of the First. Los Angeles. Angel sat in the dimly lit confines of his office, surrounded by scattered pieces of paper, maps, and photographs, all hinting at the increasing darkness of Sunnydale. The air was thick with a mix of nostalgia and tension. There was something inherently sinister about all this, something far greater than just Dracula. He was pulled from his thoughts by Cordelia, who barged in, her face pale. The usually sassy seer now looked genuinely terrified. Angel, I just had a vision. It's not just Dracula. It's the first. It's that. Angel's eyes widened. The first evil, the very embodiment of all evil that had once tormented Spike and tried to annihilate the Slayer line, was not a force to be taken lightly. We need to go to Sunnydale, Angel declared, rising. The First and Dracula together is a deadly combination. We need to warn Buffy. As Angel prepared for the journey, Sunnydale was its usual mix of chaotic and creepy. But for Spike, the evening was about to take a personally dark turn. He was perched atop one of Sunnydale's crypts, enjoying a rare moment of peace when the air grew cold. Shadows shifted, and before Spike stood a familiar face, one that had tormented him before. The first, taking the form of Dracula, his sire and one-time love. William, the apparition cooed, tilting its head in the eerie way Drew often did. Miss me? Spike sneered. What do you want? The first, with Drew's unsettlingly sweet voice, replied, To offer you a chance, my darling. Join us. Join us? Dracula, me, together. We'll rule, and you can be by our side. As the first continued its manipulative monologue, memories surged within Spike, memories of his time being tormented by the first, being used as its puppet, the dark days when he had nearly lost himself. I'm not the same Spike you could toy with, he growled, eyes flashing with defiance. I've changed. I have a soul now. The first's laughter echoed chillingly. A soul doesn't make you strong, William. It makes you weak. You'll see. And with that haunting promise, it vanished. Meanwhile, as Angel's car sped toward Sunnydale, he dialed Buffy's number, praying she'd pick up. The familiar voice answered, "Buffy here. What's up?" "Buffy," Angel's voice was urgent. "It's not just Dracula. The first is back. We're dealing with something much bigger." Silence filled the line for a moment before Buffy responded, determination evident in her tone. "Then we'll handle it. Like we always do. Together." As they spoke, their past, filled with love, heartbreak, and shared battles, created an unspoken bond between them, a bond that would be crucial in the battle that loomed ahead. Chapter 7. Telepathic Revelations. Bon Temps. The night settled over Bon Temps with an eerie stillness. Sookie Stackhouse, sitting on her porch, felt a deep sense of unease. That unmistakable tickling sensation at the back of her mind told her someone was approaching with thoughts louder than most. "Evening, Sookie," came a voice. Bill Compton stepped into the light. His face was somber. "Bill," she acknowledged, "what brings you here?" Bill hesitated. "I've felt a disturbance. Have you?" Sookie nodded. "It's not just Sunnydale. It's here too. Something big's coming." Bill sighed. "With everything going on, I thought perhaps you could try reaching out with your gift. Maybe you can pick up on Dracula's intentions or anything that might help." A hint of reluctance clouded her face. "It's not that easy, Bill. But for the sake of everyone, I'll try." Closing her eyes, Sookie concentrated, casting her telepathic net wide. Thoughts streamed in, a cacophony of mundane worries, secrets, desires, but amid that chaos, a singular sinister undercurrent pulsed. She honed in, filtering everything else out, and found herself inside a chilling tableau. Dracula, resplendent in his dark glory, conversed with shadowy figures, their voices a symphony of malice. The convergence is near. The hellmouth will open, and together with the first, we will drown this world in eternal night. Sookie recoiled from the vision, gasping for breath. Bill, concerned, asked, "What did you see?" Before she could answer, Lafayette's flamboyant voice interrupted. "Honey, you look like you just danced with the devil." Lafayette, Bon Temps cook, medium, and occasional conduit for the dead, approached with a look of genuine concern. "Been getting vibes all day at Merlotte's. Bad ones?" Sookie recounted her vision to both of them. As she spoke, Lafayette's expression darkened. "I think it's time I bring out my own set of skills. We need unity. If vampires, witches, and mediums are going to fight this, we need to be one." As the night deepened, Lafayette began a ritual calling upon spirits and ancient powers, seeking guidance and urging harmony among all supernatural entities. Bon Temps magic lit up, becoming a beacon against the encroaching darkness. By dawn, the trio felt a renewed sense of purpose. Sookie, empowered by her revelations, declared, "We need to warn everyone. Sunnydale and Bon Temps need to unite." Bill nodded together. "We might stand a chance." Lafayette, ever the dramatic, added with a smirk, "Honey, if Dracula thinks he can take on the South, he's got another thing coming." Chapter 8. The Brooding Duo. Los Angeles. The sun painted the LA skyline with shades of gold as it began its descent, casting a warm glow over the bustling city. Amidst the sprawl, the Hyperion Hotel stood as a testament to days long past, its Art Deco facade shadowed by modern high-rises. Inside, Angel Investigations was abuzz with activity. Cordelia was on the phone, Wesley was engrossed in a musty tome, and Angel was brooding. Cordelia rolled her eyes. It's not just the soulful vampire look anymore. It's full on doom and gloom since you got back from Sunnydale. Before Angel could retort, the main door burst open. A petite blonde with a no-nonsense attitude strode in, followed by the whirling dervish that was Willow Rosenberg. Buffy Summers had arrived. "Buffy," Angel murmured, the weight of years of history, love, and pain evident in that single word. "Buffy!" Cordelia exclaimed with less emotional weight and more, "Why? Are you here?" Ignoring Cordelia's dramatics, Buffy walked up to Angel, her gaze intense. "We need to talk. We can't fight Dracula and the First separately. We need to come together, Angel. Sunnydale and Lake." The atmosphere thickened with the unsaid, the history, and the shared pain. And then Willow, ever the icebreaker, piped up, also, "Hi. It's good to see you guys. Also, not good because world-ending stuff. But you know, aside from that," a hint of a smile tugged at Angel's lips. "It's good to see you too, Willow." The next hours were a whirlwind of shared information, plotting and planning. In between the serious talk of impending apocalypse, there were moments of levity and shared memories. Cordelia, flipping her hair dramatically, said, "Remember that time Dracula visited Sunnydale, and he made you his butt monkey, Xander?" Willow giggled. "Oh, and Buffy was all starry-eyed because, you know, Dracula." Buffy flushed. "Can we not? One of my less badass moments." "Let's focus on how we kick his ancient butt this time around." Angel, trying to stifle his amusement, added, "At least he didn't try to turn me into his butt monkey." The room erupted in laughter, the tension momentarily forgotten. But the mirth was short-lived as they circled back to the dire situation at hand. As the night deepened, the group took a break. Angel and Buffy found themselves alone on the hotel's rooftop. The city lights twinkled beneath them, a stark contrast to the darkness they were about to face. "I missed you," Angel whispered, the vulnerability in his eyes bared for her to see. Buffy sighed, "Me too. But this, us, it's always complicated." The moments of their past flashed before them, their first meeting, their dance at the Bronze, their love, Angelus's rampage, his soul being restored, their heartbreaking goodbye, their love story, as epic as it was tragic. "I'll always love you, Buffy," Angel murmured. She nodded, tears glistening. "And I'll always love you. But right now, we need to focus on the fight. The world's counting on us." Angel pulled her into a tight embrace. Together, Buffy, always. They stood there, two warriors bound by love and fate, ready to face the coming storm. Chapter 9, Stakes and Fangs. Bon Temps. Merlotte's was abuzz with activity, usually a hub for Friday night drinks, gossip, and curry. Okay, tonight it had taken on a new role, a training ground. Pool tables were pushed aside, chairs stacked up, and every available space was filled with a variety of weapons, stakes, crossbows, and holy water. In the corner, Buffy was showing Sookie the proper way to stake a vampire. "You have to aim right here," Buffy said, pressing a finger to her own heart, "and make sure you don't hesitate. Even a second's delay could be deadly." Sookie, determined, nodded. "Got it." Across the room, Eric was giving fighting tips to Xander. "You might not have fangs or super strength, but you can use their momentum against them," he demonstrated, swiftly sidestepping Xander's mock lunge and tripping him with a smirk. Meanwhile, Giles and Bill were engaged in a heated discussion on vampire lore. Giles, ever the watcher, was eager to learn about older vampires, especially from the pre-Civil War era. Willow and Lafayette stood near the bar, chanting and weaving their magic. Their hands glowed with combined energies as they tried to reinforce the barriers around Bon Temps, making it more challenging for Dracula's minions to infiltrate. As the evening wore on, there was a lull in the training. The weary warriors took a breather, and Sam Merlotte, ever the gracious host, began serving up bottles of true blood. Spike, curiosity getting the better of him, grabbed a bottle, sniffed it, and then took a tentative sip, his face contorted in distaste. "Bloody hell, it tastes like a diet version of O-positive." Pam, raising an eyebrow, remarked, "It's an acquired taste." Buffy, giggling, quipped, "Looks like Spike's more of a gourmet blood drinker." The air was filled with laughter, camaraderie, and shared determination. As the night wore on, new alliances were formed, and old grudges were set aside. Dawn was approaching, and Tara Thornton stepped outside to appreciate the quiet before the storm. Willow joined her, and the two shared a moment of peace. "We're going to get through this," Willow whispered, thinking not only of the impending battle, but also of the shared name and the memories it brought up. The sun began to rise, casting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The light streamed into Merlotte's, highlighting the tired but determined faces of those inside. They were ready for the fight ahead. As the day began in earnest, a sense of unity permeated Bon Temps. Vampires, witches, slayers, shapeshifters, and humans all stood together against a common threat. And as the last of the true blood bottles were put away and the weapons distributed, one thing was clear. Dracula was in for one hell of a fight. Chapter 10, Night of Ambush. Sunnydale. The night was eerily calm, only the faint whisper of the wind echoing through Sunnydale's empty streets. The combined force of the Scooby Gang, Bon Temps residents, and vampires stood vigilant around the perimeter of the Hellmouth, anticipating the surprise assault from Dracula and his forces. The Bronze, Sunnydale's popular nightclub, was now transformed into a makeshift war room. Maps of the town were sprawled across tables, marked with various symbols representing different groups. In the dim light, Buffy discussed strategies with Angel, Bill, and Eric, while others like Xander, Anya, Willow, and Suki prepped weapons or worked on spells. A sudden rumble disturbed their planning. The ground shook, and a thunderous noise echoed throughout Sunnydale. As everyone steadied themselves, a massive horde of hybrid creatures poured out from the Hellmouth. Dracula, with a triumphant smirk, floated above them, reveling in the chaos he unleashed. Giles, clutching an ancient tome, shouted over the noise, "We mustn't let them reach the city center. The Hellmouth's energy will amplify their strength manifold." Suddenly, a roar filled the air. The battle had begun. Spike, with his signature leather coat flaring behind him, charged headlong into the mass, his past animosity with Dracula fueling his rage. Jessica, using her newfound vampire abilities, took on multiple hybrids at once, while Tara Thornton channeled her inner power, manipulating the earth to trap several of the creatures. In the midst of the chaos, a poignant moment occurred between Willow and Tara McClay as they caught a glimpse of each other amidst the fighting. Willow's eyes misted over, memories flooding back. It gave her the added strength to unleash a powerful spell, disintegrating a group of the hybrids. At the Bronze's entrance, Lafayette and Dawn were back-to-back, forming a powerful duo. Dawn, with her mystical energies, was a beacon of light, disrupting the creatures, while Lafayette used his medium abilities to summon spirits for aid. Dracula, ever the mastermind, focused his attention on Buffy, launching dark spells her way. But she wasn't alone. Angel, with every ounce of his soul, fought beside her, their combined strength and impressive force against the ancient vampire. In a quieter alleyway, Xander, always the heart of the group, rallied the wounded and demoralized. He referenced their many past victories. "Remember the mayor? Adam, the first. We've got this." His words breathed new hope into the defenders. Amidst the sounds of battle, Anya, ever the capitalist, commented humorously, "The property damage bills from this are going to be astronomical." As dawn approached, the tide of the battle seemed to shift. With the combined magic of Willow, Tara Thornton, and Lafayette, a barrier began to form, pushing back the onslaught of creatures. As the horde of hybrid creatures poured out of the Hellmouth, the combined might of Sunnydale and Bon Temps sprang into action. But it was Buffy, the Slayer, whose prowess in battle truly shone that night. Buffy leapt forward, her blonde hair flowing behind her, every move a deadly dance. Using her honed martial arts skills, she sent a roundhouse kick to one creature, immediately following with an elbow strike to another. With supernatural speed, she pulled out her stake and thrust it into the heart of a vampire before pivoting to take on a hybrid. Her movements were a seamless combination of Muay Thai punches, taekwondo kicks, and judo throws, leaving a trail of defeated creatures in her wake. Willow's magic lit up the night, her eyes going black as she channeled ancient spells. Her hands radiated a glowing white energy as she summoned a whirlwind, lifting several of the hybrid creatures into the air, tearing them apart. Lafayette, drawing from his powerful medium abilities, summoned spirits of fallen warriors. Transparent figures armed with ethereal weapons clashed alongside the living. Tara Thornton, her witch powers raw and unpredictable, cried out incantations in an ancient tongue. The ground trembled, swallowing a group of hybrids whole, while thorny vines erupted from the earth, wrapping around others, pulling them back into the ground. The combined magical assault of Willow, Tara, and Lafayette was a sight to behold, a triumphant union of Bon Temps and Sunnydale magic. Spike, the bleached blonde vampire with a passion for battle, tore into Dracula's forces with savage glee. At one point, he grabbed a hybrid by its neck, lifting it into the air, and with a snarl, ripped its throat out. "Tastes like chicken," he quipped, wiping his mouth and diving back into the fray. Meanwhile, Dracula's soldiers met their gruesome end in various ways. Some, caught in the whirlwind spell, were torn to shreds, their remains scattering across the battlefield. Others were staked, their bodies turning to ash in an instant. The ones trapped by the vines screamed in agony as the thorns pierced their flesh, while the ground became a mass grave for those unlucky enough to be swallowed by it. Dracula, in a fit of rage, unleashed his own dark spells. Shadows morphed into monstrous creatures, attacking the defenders. Yet even as they seemed overwhelmed, Buffy and Angel, with their combined might and skill, cut down each shadow creature, their combined love and determination a beacon in the darkness. As dawn's light broke, the battle ended, leaving the streets littered with the remains of Dracula's once formidable army, a testament to the power of unity and the indomitable spirit of the combined forces of Sunnydale and Bon Temps. Dracula, realizing the strength of the united front against him, decided to retreat, leaving behind a town scarred but unbowed. In the aftermath, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the smoke-filled streets, the combined forces of Sunnydale and Bon Temps looked around. Yes, they had faced losses and heartaches. Some lay fallen, while others, previously underestimated, rose to the occasion, showing unprecedented courage. But one thing was clear. This was just the beginning of the endgame. Chapter 11. The Essence of Magic. Sunnydale. In the aftermath of the assault, the air was thick with sorrow and ash. The bronze, though scuffed and battered, had become a refuge. In a quiet corner, Willow Rosenberg sat with two Taras, one from Sunnydale and another from Bon Temps. Between them, Lafayette added his own unique flair, his bracelets jingling softly. Willow looked at Tara Maclay, her red hair contrasting starkly with the worn-out map spread out before them. "Every battle reminds me of..." That day, Willow's voice broke slightly. Flashbacks played in her mind, a serene morning, a gunshot, and a life lost forever. Tara Thornton gently touched Willow's arm, her blue eyes understanding. "We have our own losses in Bon Temps, but right now we need to focus. Dracula might have retreated, but he'll come back with more of those hybrids." The room was filled with an assortment of objects, crystals, herbs, and ancient relics. Giles, ever the researcher, had theorized that the key to defeating the hybrids lay in blending both the mystical elements of Sunnydale and Bon Temps. Lafayette, with his trademark bandana and sass, said, "Honey, if we're gonna do this, let's make it big and flashy." He began to channel spirits, drawing on the history of Bon Temps, the echoes of the past aiding their mission. As the trio began chanting, a swirl of energy started emanating from them, converging in the center. Light intertwined with shadow as powers of two worlds intermingled. The energy solidified, forming a beautifully intricate pendant, the embodiment of their combined magic. "This," said Tara Thornton, holding up the pendant, "represents unity. Dracula's hybrids are strong, but they're still a mishmash of different species. Our strength lies in the harmony of our magic. This pendant might just be our secret weapon." Willow, with newfound determination, replied, "We have something Dracula can't comprehend: love, unity, and the strength that comes from shared grief." Amidst their planning, Xander, wearing an eye patch that was a constant reminder of battles past, interjected with his characteristic humor. "So just to be clear, we're going to defeat ancient evil with a shiny necklace. Classic." Buffy, joining them, smiled. "With all the weird things we've faced, a necklace doesn't even crack the top 10. She looked around at the assembled group. Vampires, witches, slayers, and regular humans. "We have the essence of magic on our side. Let Dracula come. We're ready." The bronze was filled with the hum of discussions, magic spells being readied and weapons being sharpened. But in a corner, Giles, looking every bit the Watcher with his glasses perched on his nose, called Buffy and a few others for a strategic meeting. Gathering his thoughts, he began, while it might seem like a victory that we fended off Dracula's first wave of attacks, I fear that this was merely a reconnaissance mission on his part. Buffy frowned. Reconnaissance. Giles? He came with a full army. Giles adjusted his glasses, a habit when he was deep in thought. Yes, he did. But Buffy? You must remember who we're dealing with. Dracula is ancient, cunning, and has waged wars for centuries. He knows the value of information. I suspect he wanted to gauge our strength, our strategies, and our unity. That might be considered a full army for anyone else, but for Dracula, this was small scouting party. Angel, arms crossed, added, "He's seen me fight before, and Spike too, but he doesn't know all our allies, especially the residents of Bon Temps. It's like he was taking notes for the next round." Giles nodded in agreement. Precisely. He now knows about Willow, Tara, and Lafayette's combined magic. He's witnessed the unity between Sunnydale and Bon Temps, and with that knowledge, he will adapt. The next time he strikes, he'll come with a force that's not just bigger but also tailored to counter our strengths. Suki, trying to grasp the gravity of Giles' words, asked, "So you're saying he was just testing the waters?" "Indeed," Giles confirmed. Dracula's centuries of existence have taught him patience. He can afford to lose a battle if it provides him with the intelligence to win the war. We must anticipate his moves and be prepared for a much larger, more ferocious attack. Buffy, determination evident in her eyes, clenched her fist. Then we train harder, prepare more, and ensure that when he returns, this motherfucker regrets ever setting foot in Sunnydale again. Giles gave a proud smile. That's the spirit, Buffy. But remember, knowledge is our most potent weapon. We must study our enemy and anticipate his every move. We will do our own reconnaissance. Chapter 12. Dark Angel. Los Angeles. The night in Los Angeles had an odd pallor to it, unlike the nights in Sunnydale. It had a different flavor of danger, a different texture to its darkness. Angel, having faced many adversaries throughout his long life, felt the weight of the air. The looming presence of Dracula brought back memories he wished he'd left behind. He had ventured out following a lead that took him to an abandoned warehouse in downtown L.A. There, he was hoping to find more about Dracula's hybrid creatures. Instead, he walked right into Dracula's lair. Angelus, a deep, commanding voice resonated through the vast empty space, dripping with a mock affection. Dracula, with his regal poise, stepped out of the shadows, his tall frame eerily luminescent in the dim light. Angel tightened his grip on his weapon. "Dracula." "Not surprised to find you here, though I should have expected the theatrics." Dracula chuckled. "Ah, Angelus, always so terse. Or should I say Angel? It's hard to keep up with your mood swings. One moment you're the bane of Europe, the next you're playing the brooding hero." Angel's face remained impassive. "I've moved on from the past, Dracula. It's a shame you're stuck in it." As the two ancient vampires faced off, the tension was palpable. Every echo, every shuffle seemed amplified, and just when it felt like the silence might last an eternity, Dracula moved closer, circling Angel. "I've come for a simple purpose," Dracula began, his voice dripping with honeyed malice. "I want Angelus back. Together we'd be unstoppable. Two of the most formidable vampires in history. The world would be ours." "I won't let you bring him out," Angel retorted, a fire lighting up in his eyes. Dracula smirked. "Ah, but don't you see? I don't need your permission." And with that, he lunged at Angel with a speed that would have been blinding to human eyes. But Angel was prepared. He blocked and parried Dracula's advances, their fighting echoing through the warehouse, a dance of death and destruction. Then Dracula disappeared into thin air as Angel lunged at him in counterattack. The vastness of the abandoned warehouse was accentuated by the intermittent echo of dripping water, shadows painting a canvas of eeriness. Angel's posture shifted into a defensive stance as Dracula emerged from the darkness. every inch of him emanating malevolent power. "You've always been predictable, Angelus," Dracula sneered, using the name from Angel's darkest days to get a rise out of him. Without warning, Dracula, tapping into his ancient abilities, unleashed a force that sent crates flying towards Angel. Angel, using his own vampire speed, dodged effortlessly. The crates crashed into the walls, causing dust and debris to fill the air. Dracula didn't wait. He morphed into a cloud of mist, trying to disorient Angel, and then solidified behind him, attempting to land a fatal blow. But Angel was swift, having faced countless foes in his lifetime. He countered, and their combat became a whirlwind of superhuman agility and strength. Every punch, every kick sent shockwaves throughout the warehouse. Angel employed a mix of martial arts, while Dracula drew on techniques that seemed ancient, almost primal. Dracula, using his telekinesis, sent a cascade of chains hurtling toward Angel. Angel leaped up, grabbing onto a suspended chain, and used it to swing himself towards Dracula, his feet connecting squarely with Dracula's chest. Dracula was thrown backward, crashing through stacks of old wooden pallets, splintering them. Not to be outdone, he summoned a swarm of bats that flew in a dizzying pattern around Angel, distracting him. Using this to his advantage, Dracula lunged again, and this time their physical clash sent them hurtling through the warehouse, destroying pillars and walls. In the midst of their battle, Dracula attempted to tap into Angel's mind to bring forth the darkness of Angelus. For a moment, Angel staggered, visions of his past atrocities clouding his judgment. Dracula seized the moment, hurling Angel through a series of glass windows, shards flying everywhere. But Angel wasn't down for long. With a primal roar, he launched himself at Dracula, both of them crashing through the roof, momentarily airborne before crashing back down, causing the ground to quake upon their return. Yet, as the fight wore on, Angel felt the weight of his past, the lure of Angelus, pulling at him. Memories flashed before him. The innocent lives he'd taken, the pleasure he'd felt, and the darkness he'd reveled in. Seeing Angel falter, Dracula grinned, his victory almost within grasp. "Can you feel it, Angelus? The call of the darkness? The power you once wielded?" Dracula smothered him with a wave of telepathic paralysis. But just as Angel's defenses seemed to crumble, a voice echoed through the warehouse. "Angel." Cordelia, weapon in hand, stood at the entrance, her presence a beacon for Angel. The memories shifted, now showing moments of love, friendship, redemption. The pull of Angelus weakened. Seeing his plan foiled, Dracula hissed in anger. But before he retreated into the shadows, he left Angel with a parting gift. "Remember, Angelus, darkness resides in you, always waiting to be awakened." Angel, catching his breath, looked to Cordelia, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you." Cordelia, with a smirk, replied, "Well, someone has to keep you from brooding too much." As they left the warehouse, Angel shared a realization. During the fight, I picked up something in his thoughts, something he tried to hide but couldn't help thinking about. An old Romanian ritual. I think I know Dracula's weakness. Cordelia raised an eyebrow, intrigue evident. Then we better get that information to Buffy. With that, the two ventured into the night, a renewed determination to put an end to Dracula's reign of terror. Chapter 13. Convergence. The sun dipped below the horizon as Bon Temps merged with the mystical energies of Sunnydale. In the center of it all stood the old Merlot's bar, its wooden sign creaking in the slight wind, a beacon for supernaturals and hunters alike. It was here that the convergence began. Inside Merlot's, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The tables had been pushed aside to form a makeshift war room. Maps of Sunnydale, lore books, and weapons were scattered everywhere. In one corner, Spike and Eric exchanged cold glares, each sizing the other up. "Never took you for a mainstreamer, Spike," Eric remarked, referencing the bottle of True Blood next to Spike. Spike sneered. "Got a problem with my drink, Viking?" Before either could react, Pam stepped between them, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Boys, there's enough of me to go around." Meanwhile, Willow and Tara Thornton were engrossed in conversation with Lafayette. They were drawing symbols, their fingers tracing ancient patterns as they crafted the weapon to counter the hybrid creatures. Magic from both our worlds. Hope it doesn't go kablooey, Willow mused. Lafayette, with his usual flamboyance, responded, "Honey, if it does, will be the most fabulous explosion this side of the Mississippi." Xander, wielding a crossbow, approached Jessica. "Ever use one of these?" She blinked. "I prefer my fangs, but shoot." He smirked. "That's the plan." Buffy and Sookie stood together, united in their determination. "Heard a lot about you," Sookie began, "mostly from Bill, who can't stop mentioning your stake technique." Buffy raised an eyebrow. "Bill talks about my staking?" Sookie rolled her eyes. "Vampire obsessions? You'll get used to it." As the night deepened, Giles and Bill Compton took center stage. Giles cleared his throat. "We're here because our worlds, our realities, are on the verge of collapse. Dracula, with his new creations, poses a threat unlike any we've faced." Bill added, "It's not just about vampires, witches, or slayers anymore. It's about survival." Angel, fresh from his confrontation with Dracula, shared the information about Dracula's potential weakness, the essence that binds him to this plane. "We have a lead, then," Buffy declared, determination clear in her eyes. "But it's not just about Dracula. It's about the army he's creating," Angel cautioned. Sam Merlot shifted uncomfortably. "Whatever it is, we face it together, Bon Temps and Sunnydale." The room echoed with a chorus of agreement, from the growls of werewolves to the whispered incantations of witches. Dawn, ever the peacemaker, suggested, "Maybe we could start with some team-building exercises." Everyone stared, prompting her to add, "Kidding! But seriously, how about some introductions?" And as the supernatural denizens of two towns introduced themselves, shared stories, and formed alliances, it was evident that the convergence was not just about location, but hearts and souls coming together. In the midst of planning, Spike's voice rang out. "Anyone thought of inviting Dracula to this shindig? Seems only polite." The room erupted into laughter, breaking the tension, even if only for a brief moment. The room's laughter began to fade, replaced once again by the gravity of the situation at hand. Everyone instinctively turned their attention to Giles as he stepped forward, adjusting his glasses with a nervous gesture. "I believe there is a ritualistic aspect to Dracula's newfound strength that we haven't yet touched upon," he began. "While in Romania, I came across references to an ancient ceremony known as the Romanian ritual. It's said to amplify a vampire's inherent abilities, binding their essence to the dark energies of the earth itself. Now, as far as we know, he has also channeled the first evil in order to manifest this greater power, so we must proceed with the utmost caution." Eric Northman frowned. "Romania, Transylvania, that's Dracula's home turf." "Indeed," Giles continued. "The ritual requires the vampire to be in their ancestral land, tapping into ley lines that date back millennia. Dracula's connection to these lines, paired with the Romanian ritual and the channeling of the first, would make him nearly invincible. It seems like he parlayed this by employing modern science as, well, raising this hybrid army." Sookie, her brow furrowed, asked, "So if this ritual is giving him power, can't we just ritual it?" Giles smirked. "In a manner of speaking, yes. To counter the Romanian ritual, we must invoke a combination of ancient spells and ceremonies. These rituals, sourced from diverse magics, can disrupt the energies Dracula's tapped into." Willow piped in, eager. "So, a magical cocktail of sorts?" "Exactly," Giles affirmed. "While in Romania, I managed to gather some scrolls detailing 3 key ceremonies: the Gypsy's Lament, the Celtic Rite of Shadows, and the Norse Binding. Combined, they can potentially negate the effects of the Romanian ritual." Tara Thornton nodded thoughtfully. "That might also weaken the bonds between him and his hybrid creations," Lafayette added with a flamboyant flourish. "Then let's mix us some mystical mojo." Buffy squared her shoulders. "All right, Giles, Willow, Tara, Lafayette. You handle the counter ritual." The rest of us will prepare for the fight. We need to be ready for when Dracula and his army strike. As the teams divided, Spike lit up a cigarette and mused, Romanian rituals and occult mixology shit. Never a dull moment with this lot. Chapter 14. Battle at the Hellmouth. The sky over Sunnydale was painted with an eerie blend of deep purples and fiery oranges, signaling the impending dusk. The team had gathered at the entrance of the Hellmouth, its ominous energy palpable. Buffy, stake in hand, surveyed the group. The odd mix of vampire slayers, witches, vampires, shapeshifters, and mere humans made for a motley crew, but each was united in purpose. Remember, everyone, Buffy began, her voice steady and commanding. Dracula is powerful, but he's not unbeatable. Together, we stand a chance. Spike, leaning against a gravestone, added with his usual smirk, and remember, Peaches, don't let any of those hybrids bite. Not sure what they'd turn you into, but I'm not eager to find out. Eric Northman rolled his eyes. You think your sarcasm is going to help? Bleached one? Spike chuckled. Bleached? What's on your mind? You missing your mother's anus? Eric grumbled. Xander adjusted the crossbow on his shoulder, interjecting, Okay, team, less banter, more battle prep. Lafayette, lighting some sage and moving in a circle, added, I'll need to focus on the bigger picture. We're talking about Dracula, the OG vampire. We need all hands, fangs, and magic on deck. Willow, Tara Thornton, and Giles began the counter-ritual chants, using the ancient scrolls Giles had obtained. Their voices echoed, interweaving as they drew protective symbols in the dirt. Just then, a shrieking howl cut through the air. Emerging from the shadows were the hybrid creatures, part vampire, part demon. Their grotesque forms lumbered forward, eyes aglow with hunger. Sam Merlot, using his shape-shifting abilities, morphed into a formidable wolf, lunging at the closest hybrid. Buffy and Angel, moving in unison, tackled and staked several creatures, their years of experience evident. Spike and Eric, not to be outdone, moved with deadly grace, their vampire speed and strength on full display. Jessica and Tara struggled initially, their younger vampire status apparent, but soon they too fell into a rhythm. Amidst the melee, Suki, using her telepathy, tried to anticipate the hybrid's moves. She shouted warnings, her voice rising above the chaos. Behind you, Spike, or to your left, Eric. Lafayette, channeling his medium abilities, summoned spirits from the nearby graves, causing disarray among the hybrids. The spectral entities clawed and harassed the creatures, proving to be unexpected allies. Xander and Anya, teaming up as they often did, used crossbows to shoot from a distance, their arrows finding their marks with precision, through eyes, ears, throats, and hearts. The battle raged on, with the ground of the Hellmouth saturated in a mixture of blood and ectoplasm. But just when it seemed the tide was turning in their favor, a cold, commanding voice echoed across the graveyard. Enough of this. It was Dracula. His tall form, cloaked in shadows, was more imposing than ever. It was clear that the Romanian ritual had significantly enhanced his power. With a wave of his hand, he sent a group of defenders flying back, crashing into tombstones. Buffy locked eyes with him, determination evident. This ends now. As the two began their confrontation, Giles, realizing the dire situation, shouted to Willow and Tara Thornton, We need to complete the counter-ritual. Now? The three of them joined hands, their chanting reaching a crescendo. Hybrids swarmed everywhere. As Buffy and others destroyed them, twice as many seemed to take their place. The Hellmouth was alive with the shrill howls of the hybrids. These creatures, spawned from the twisted ambitions of a mad scientist, now served Dracula's dark will. Their grotesque bodies, a horrifying blend of demon and vampire, made them formidable foes. Sam Merlot shifted into a powerful wolf, lunging ferociously at a nearby hybrid. His fangs tore into its throat, spilling out a grotesque mix of blood and ichor. However, another creature quickly retaliated, slashing its sharp claws against Sam's side, leaving deep wounds. Spike and Eric clashed with the hybrids in a ballet of brutality. Eric's Viking warrior instincts kicked in as he tore through one creature after another, his fangs dripping. But his overconfidence led to carelessness. One of the hybrids managed to dig its claws into Eric's thigh, drawing out thick, ancient blood. As Angel tried to assist, two hybrids ambushed him, their combined weight forcing him to the ground. He fought fiercely, but one managed to bite deeply into his shoulder while another savagely clawed at his arm, rendering it limp and useless. Spike, noticing the vulnerable state of his fellow vampires, attempted to intervene but was held back by three more hybrids, their eyes glowing with malevolent glee. Amid the chaos, Xander bravely took on a group of hybrids with his crossbow. He shot arrow after arrow, each finding its mark. However, in the adrenaline of the fight, he failed to notice a hybrid sneaking up behind him. With a swift motion, the creature's claws raked across Xander's back, leaving him writhing in pain on the ground. Tara and Jessica exhibited unexpected strength and coordination. Their combined efforts were impressive, leaving a trail of fallen hybrids in their wake. However, the relentless onslaught was taking its toll on everyone. Just as Giles, Willow, and Tara Thornton began the final portion of their counter-ritual, a horde of hybrids, sensing the threat the trio posed, descended upon them. Their chanting was drowned out by the ear-piercing shrieks of the creatures who swarmed around them, eager to feast on their magic-infused blood. In the thick of the battle, Buffy found herself facing the Dark Prince himself. The two danced a deadly tango, but even with her Slayer's strength and skill, Dracula's newfound power gave him an edge. With lightning speed and steel boots, he delivered a kick to Buffy's groin that sent Buffy sprawling, clutching herself in pain. "Ah, that got my clit," Buffy groaned. Seeing his opportunity, Dracula lunged forward to finish Buffy once and for all. Just as his fangs were inches from Buffy's neck, a fierce battle cry echoed through the graveyard. Faith, the rogue Slayer, crashed onto the scene, wielding a large double-edged axe. With precision and ferocity, she plunged it into Dracula's back. "Bet you never thought anyone would stab you in the back," Faith cried. His scream of agony was music to the defender's ears. Seizing the moment, a severely injured Angel, using his one good arm, teamed up with Faith and Eric pushing back Dracula. The combined assault of two Slayers and a Viking vampire forced Dracula to retreat, blood oozing from multiple wounds. With the main threat temporarily subdued, the rest of the group rallied to defend Giles, Willow, and Tara. Sam, shape-shifting into a large Sasquatch, provided the muscle needed to fend off the hybrids. Lafayette, tapping into his medium abilities, managed to call forth spirits of powerful witches buried nearby. The ethereal figures formed a protective barrier around the trio, giving them the time they needed. The chant reached its climax, and a blinding surge of energy radiated from the ground, causing the hybrids to scream in agony. One by one, they collapsed, their unnatural forms unable to withstand the power of the combined ritual. The sky above the Hellmouth rippled with energy. Dracula screamed in agony, the power of the ritual weakening him. His grip on the hybrids waned, and one by one, they began to crumble, turning to ash. But just as victory seemed within grasp, the battlefield was ripe with roars, cries, and clanging weapons. Vampires, hybrids, and slayers clashed in brutal combat, each side pushing against the other with relentless fury. As the dust of fallen hybrids filled the air, Dracula, though wounded and battered, roared in defiance. With a chilling laugh, Dracula summoned an ancient power, his voice echoing with a dark, haunting resonance. "You may have wounded me, but you forget who I truly am." As he spoke, the very air around him seemed to warp and twist. Everyone paused, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The very ground quaked as Dracula began to levitate, his form merging with a shadowy, ethereal presence. The first, a symbol glowing with a sinister red hue, formed below him, its tendrils of energy reaching out, binding all present. The Hellmouth itself seemed to tremble in response. The dark aura around Dracula intensified, his eyes white with pure, unbridled power. He unleashed a devastating shockwave of energy, so forceful that it ripped through the warehouse, sending everyone, from Buffy to the powerful Eric, hurtling backward. They crashed into walls, columns, and ground, falling into unconscious heaps. From the ground, amid the fallen and debris, Giles managed to lift his head. He spotted Willow, the linchpin of their ritual, lying a short distance away, the energy link she had been maintaining now severed. With all the strength he could muster, Giles crawled to her side, shaking her gently. "Willow," he gasped. "The chant." Willow's eyes fluttered open, pain and determination shining in them. I can finish it," she whispered. As Dracula continued to draw power from the first, becoming an even greater threat, Giles made a decision. Holding Willow's hand, he helped her to her feet, steadying her. "Do it, Willow. I'll buy us some time." As Suki regained consciousness in the midst of rubble, a gigantic hybrid resembling a dog-like Dracula himself pounced on her, and as she lifted her arms to shield herself, bit into her. Screaming in agony, she immediately started convulsing and transforming. Eric, cornered on all sides himself, notices Suki's wild thrashing, screaming, "No!" Another massive wave of hybrids seemed to materialize from nowhere as Dracula's laugh echoed all around them. "You are all doomed. You cannot prevent the inevitable," Dracula screamed. Knowing the risk, but seeing no other way, Giles lunged at the hovering Dracula, trying to distract him and break his concentration. Dracula, surprised by the sudden and fierce attack from the Watcher, turned in fury. For a split second, their eyes locked, and then, with a swift, brutal motion, Dracula snapped Giles' neck. "No!" Buffy screamed, witnessing the horrifying scene. In that split second, her grief and rage became a rallying cry. Faith, Angel, and the remaining fighters, powered by adrenaline and the sheer will to survive, charged at Dracula. The two Slayers, despite their differences, fought with a synchronicity that was awe-inspiring. Eric and Angel, with vampiric speed, flanked Dracula, while Buffy and Faith, armed with an array of weapons, jumped into the fray. Stakes, swords, and daggers pierced into Dracula, each weapon seeking to end the ancient vampire's reign of terror. As the onslaught continued, Willow, her voice clear and resonating, resumed the chant. Magic flowed around her, golden threads of energy weaving through the air. The chant reached its crescendo, and a blinding wave of energy engulfed the room. Suki, now transformed into a hybrid herself, began charging at Willow. Dracula, overwhelmed and pierced from all sides, looked up and screamed as the magic drained him of his power. His connection to the first shattered, and with a final agonized roar, he disintegrated into ash. Willow's nervous eyes flashed with relief as Suki collapsed at her feet and returned to her human form. Amid the silence that followed the disintegration of Dracula, Buffy, panting and covered in dust and ash, surveyed the scene. Her eyes briefly caught the scattered remnants of Dracula, and she quipped, "Well, I always knew Dracula was overrated, but who knew he'd be a literal dust in the wind?" As dawn's first light approached, the last of the hybrids were defeated, but an ominous voice lingered. "This is not the end, Slayer." Buffy and Faith share a nervous look as Buffy breaks the silence. "I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that." As the dust settled and the eerie silence took over, Buffy, panting and bloodied, glanced over at Faith, who was wiping hybrid blood off her leather jacket. "You always did have a flair for the dramatic entrance," Buffy said with a smirk, adjusting her disheveled hair. Faith winked and replied with a smirk. "Gotta keep you on your toes, Bee. Figured Sunnydale could use a little more of that Faith charm." Buffy rolled her eyes, though a grin still tugged at her lips. "Oh, we missed you terribly. Between ancient vampires, the first, and now hybrid monsters, things were getting a tad boring without your charm." "Well, I do aim to please," Faith retorted with a laugh, leaning in conspiratorially. "Besides, heard Drac was in town. Couldn't let you have all the fun." Buffy sighed dramatically, always stealing my thunder. "Next, you'll be telling me you came just for the chance to stake him and not for the heartwarming reunion with me." Faith nudged her playfully, a little bit of A, a little bit of B. But come on, Bee. Did you really think you could have an end of the world party without me? Chuckling, Buffy shook her head. Never. It wouldn't be the same without you, Faith. Matching Buffy's earnest gaze, Faith winked again. That's what I thought. Spike, exhausted but never one to miss a beat, quipped. Well, that was fun. Any one of you twats up for a pint? But the laughter abruptly stopped as everyone turned their attention to Angel kneeling beside Giles' lifeless form. The Hellmouth had quieted. The battle's end and Dracula's defeat were cause for celebration, but the atmosphere grew heavy with sorrow. The Scooby Gang, the Bon Temps group, and the remaining fighters gathered in the rubble of what used to be Sunnydale High's library. Willow approached the space where Giles had fallen. Her eyes welled up, her hands trembling as she held Giles' glasses. The lenses, cracked from the confrontation, caught the pale light of dawn. She whispered an incantation, causing the frames to mend and the lenses to clear. The group, even those who had known Giles for only a short time, formed a semicircle around his body. Buffy stepped forward, her face stoic, but her eyes betrayed her heartbreak. He was more than a watcher, she began. He was a friend, a mentor, and basically, a really annoying dad. Giles taught me more than just how to fight. He taught me about life and the importance of the choices we make. Xander, clutching a crossbow, added, and how to appreciate a really, really dry British sense of humor. Dawn, tears streaming down her face, spoke softly. He was there when I needed guidance. He was family. Angel, now standing back with Cordelia and Faith, broke his silence. I've known many in my long life, but few with the wisdom and heart of Rupert Giles. Suki stepped forward. I may have only known him for a short time, but he made a lasting impression. He was brave, selfless, and his legacy will never fade. As the day's first light touched Giles' form, Willow began chanting, and Tara joined her, their combined magic softly lifting his body. The earth in front of them parted, creating a resting place for the fallen watcher. They gently laid him down, the soil rising to cover him, a simple yet honorable burial. In the ensuing silence, Faith muttered, "The world's a darker place without him." Buffy, clearing her throat, managed a faint smile. "Then it's our job to bring the light. For Giles." They all nodded in agreement, linking arms and standing united, honoring the memory of the man who had guided them through darkness and into the dawn. Chapter 15. Dawn of a New Night. The sun rose on a battlefield painted in ash and blood. The Hellmouth once again remained sealed, but at what cost? The survivors gathered, each bearing scars and tales of courage, both old and new. The Hellmouth's immediate vicinity looked more like a wasteland than the town they once knew. Suki, her telepathic abilities momentarily drowned out by the weight of grief, sat with Bill, both consoling each other. Bill, though appearing no worse for wear, bore the weight of centuries on his shoulders. This was not his first battle, nor would it be his last. Nearby, Willow and the Taras helped heal the wounded using their combined magic. Their incantations weaved through the air, stitching up wounds and easing pain. The light of their magic was a stark contrast to the darkness of the previous night. Lafayette, ever the unyielding spirit, handed out makeshift potions and words of comfort to all who needed them. Buffy and Faith, their banter now replaced by a somber camaraderie, stood surveying the aftermath. "So this is what winning looks like," Faith mused, her face a mask of grim contemplation. Buffy sighed. "Sometimes, I guess, but we're still here, and the world keeps turning." Eric, regal and imposing even with his wounds, approached with Pam in tow. "You have a strong town, Slayer," he remarked. "You keep things interesting." Buffy smirked. "You're welcome back anytime, Fangs. But maybe call ahead next time?" Pam rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You'd miss us too much." Xander, with an arm in a sling courtesy of Dracula, leaned against a ruined wall, jokingly flexing his muscles. "Think this will impress the ladies?" he asked Anya, who just rolled her eyes in her typical fashion. Faith looked at him, weariness evident in her eyes. "Keep dreaming, stud?" Cordelia, ever the fashionista, even in apocalypse aftermath, surveyed her ruined attire with a sigh. "Well, There's another outfit for the trash. Note to self, never fight ancient vampires in designer heels. Angel, leaning heavily on a makeshift staff due to his injuries, chuckled softly. You never change, do you, Cordy? She shot him a glare, but it lacked any real heat. Someone has to bring some style to these doomsday shindigs. Suki, still processing the magnitude of supernatural forces she'd just witnessed, turned to Buffy. Your life is this crazy all the time, isn't it? Buffy shrugged with a tired smile, give or take a few apocalypses. But hey, it has its moments. Faith, ever the wild card, chimed in. Yeah, if you're into the whole life and death, stakes, and Vamp's dance routine. Angel looked at Buffy, the weight of their shared history evident in their gaze. We always find our way back to each other, don't we? He remarked softly. Buffy nodded, a hint of a smile on her lips. Some things are just meant to be. Their hands found each other, intertwining fingers a symbol of their enduring bond. Suki, ever the empath, sensed the undercurrents. Love sure is complicated in your world, she commented. Faith snorted. Honey, you have no idea. Cordelia cleared her throat. All right, enough with the sappy moments. Who's up for some breakfast? I'm starving. Suki laughed after all this. You're thinking of food? Hey, Cordelia retorted, saving the world works up an appetite. And as they all started moving toward what was left of the town, their laughter echoed, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who defy the darkness, time and time again. As the day wore on, farewells were exchanged. The residents of Bon Temps prepared to return home, with stories of Sunnydale that would become legends in their own right. The Scooby Gang, old and new, gathered at the ruins of the Magic Box, their de facto headquarters. I guess this is goodbye then, Suki said, looking at Buffy. Their shared bond of leadership, loss, and love was palpable. For now, Buffy replied, embracing her. But who knows? Maybe our paths will cross again. As cars roared to life and the convoy from Bon Temps began to head out, Buffy, flanked by her friends and family, watched them leave. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was for sure, they would face it together. And as the sun reached its zenith, casting away the darkness of the previous night, Sunnydale stood defiant and resilient, a beacon for all those who fought against the night. Epilogue. Echoes from Transylvania. In the cold, desolate heart of Transylvania, a grand keep loomed over the countryside, casting an imposing shadow. The keep, a relic of the old world, had belonged to Dracula for centuries. Cobwebbed and seemingly abandoned, there was still an unsettling presence about it, a sense of eyes watching from the darkness. Deep within its chambers, in a room adorned with arcane symbols and alchemical equipment, a new form of horror was taking shape. Dr. Nigel Madison, the enigmatic scientist who had dared to mingle science and magic, was immersed in his work. Around him, giant glass tubes filled with swirling dark energies pulsed and hummed, an unnatural light illuminating his crazed eyes. But the most imposing of them all was the central tube, much larger than the others, and filled with fragmented shapes and shadows. The silhouette of what seemed like Dracula was forming slowly, its particles coalescing bit by bit. But this wasn't just any Dracula. This seemed darker, more powerful, with a palpable aura of the first evil emanating from it. Madison's lips curled into a smirk, his eyes darting from the slowly forming Dracula to the intricacies of the equipment and back. Humming to himself in a tune eerily cheerful amidst the oppressive atmosphere, he sung Humpty Dumpty Had a Great Fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. He paused, leaning closer to the tube, grin never leaving his face. But I can. A chilling laugh echoed through the keep as the dawn's first light seemed to avoid the castle, leaving it in perpetual night with a storm of shadows drifting about it as if the epicenter for a new age of darkness.